Hi there, thanks for joining me for another live stream here from safety.com, where we're going to review another prosecution that's just been through the courts in the UK. So if you've already joined us before for some of these, you'll know what the format is, and we're going to keep them going as long as we can. So let's dive into this one. This one was about a recycling company, which I'll throw up on screen now, the story from the HSE. A recycling company was fined over £2 million for corporate manslaughter and breaches relating to Health and Safety at Work Act. As you can see, a summary of it there. Oh, it's not on screen. Just give me a moment. Not sure where that's went to. Anyway, sorry, to move on, excuse the technical hiccup. Basically, the recycling company was fined after a worker was killed after they were in a collision with a loading shovel. The worker was hit as they were walking across the work area or the recycling loading area, coming from their break to going back from their break to the picking line that they were actually working in. So the big issue here was that there was no segregation between the pedestrians and the mobile plant or vehicles that were working in the area. And so obviously that's an issue that we would see a lot of from a transport safety perspective. A couple of things that the HSE noted there that you'll see in the report, which I'll put a link to, is that they understood that when they looked at this loading shovel, I'm going to try to put the loading shovel up on the screen here. Give me a moment. Oh, that one worked. Okay. As you can see, this is the sort of the vehicle that we're talking about here. So it's a large bit of mobile plant. If you've ever been in a waste management or recycling yard, you'll see these things moving about quite often, moving materials from one area to the other. As you can imagine, they can be a significant risk due to their size. The thing that I was going to point out there was the HSE had noted that the driver in certain areas of the work area had up to 10 meters of obscured view from his cab. So obviously there's a lot of blind spots there, potential risk of collision with pedestrians. Also, the big factor in this as well, as I mentioned already, I think, is that there was no segregation between where the pedestrian or worker was walking and the operation of that large vehicle. And unfortunately, the result was that both came into contact. So this is something that I've seen a lot of over the course of my career. I did work in the recycling industry for a number of years as well, so it is pretty close to home from that perspective. And I have to say that those yards are one of the higher risk areas that I would come across when it comes to workplace transport. So a couple of things we can take away from this for not only the waste industry, but any industry we're working in with heavy vehicles and plant movements, and that risk from a transport perspective. First of all, just to make sure you have a transport risk assessment in place is the obvious one. Has it been done specifically and properly for your site? That'd be a question that I would ask first of all. A lot of the time, the risk of or from transport is a secondary sort of consideration for people outside of their operations internally. So ask that question, have we done something proper to look at those specific risks? There has been a push, certainly in Northern Ireland here recently, from the HSE regarding transport risk assessment. We've been working a lot on that over the last few months towards the end of 2023. So yeah, look at that, see what there is if you're working in a particular business or across different businesses, see what's in place first of all. Secondly, then looking at more of the sort of the useful aspects of what might reduce risk. A big factor, as we've already touched on, is that segregation between your pedestrians and your vehicles. How far can you go, or how far have you went in terms of segregating the potential for collision there? As we've seen in this particular instance, there's been very little done to separate those two parties, I guess. And although it's not always possible to eradicate the potential for collision between vehicles and pedestrians, you can certainly nearly always make good strides towards minimizing or limiting that potential for contact. And I think the big thing in this case was that not only was there no segregation in place, but the two people that were involved, the operator and the victim of the collision, the worker themselves who was hit was working on a picking line, so they weren't really involved in the yard operations directly, from what we understand. And similarly, the operator of the vehicle wouldn't have been aware necessarily of the people or the person that was walking past them, and therefore the risk of an accident then is increased quite a bit. So that goes to say, there are circumstances where, of course, if you're a banksman or you're someone that's working as a supervisor in an area, you may need to be in and around those vehicles, but the importance is the understanding of the plant or vehicle operator knowing that you're there, that level of awareness, obviously to avoid the potential or limit the potential for collision. So the last point on that then, I always sort of try and crunch my points on these down to three aspects. The last bit I would say is to make sure you have or endeavour to have a site map. That's something that a lot of managers that I come up against are a little bit sheepish about. I don't know what it is, but in the health and safety sort of practice, we would always, first of all, my first stop would be, look, get a transport site map down, look at the layout of your site, look at how the vehicles and pedestrians move around the site. And until you understand that, you can't really manage and make decisions around putting control measures in, like segregation, one-way systems, limiting reversing, and so on. So, try and get that nailed down first. Understand how everything's laid out, how everything moves, why it moves, and so on. And then you'll be in a good position to move forward from there. Also, to finish, another tip when I was scribbling notes here would be, if you haven't got a site map or you want to review it, I would suggest if you have CCTV, utilize that, take the footage, watch a couple of hours of it, see exactly what happens in the external and internal areas of your site where vehicles and plant is moving. That's going to open your eyes to a lot of the reality of what's going on versus what you maybe think is going on, or what happens maybe when you step out in there and people may perhaps behave differently than what they do otherwise. If you don't have that, even if you can get into an elevated position, a viewing point of some sort on the site, and to spend a few hours watching what happens, that's going to really help you in terms of understanding where the problems are, and then hopefully move forward to help reduce risk thereafter. So that's it on this one. Another tragic accident, but a few things we can learn and start to think about again. Hopefully some of these points were helpful. Certainly if you do have any suggestions yourself, please drop them in the comments. I'm trying to get the comment system running properly here, but it's not great in the way it's set up at the moment. But do keep an eye out for more of these coming up. There'll be another one coming up on Monday. And don't forget to visit us at safety.com to avail our free courses, training courses that we have. We're giving away 1 million courses if you haven't already heard me saying that, but I'm going to keep mentioning it as much as possible. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.